Okay, so we're diving into this analysis, the one that sees things like Stranger Things and Leave the World Behind as basically allegories for a coming plasma apocalypse, forgotten history, Montauk, that kind of thing.
Right. And just to be clear, we're not debating the apocalypse itself today.
No, no. We're looking squarely at the host, the psychology, the rhetoric, how he builds his case and his persona. Let's get right into it.
Okay, first point then. The host very strategically builds this high authority persona. He does it using, proprietary jargon and these really aggressive redefinitions of words. It effectively shuts down outside critique.
Yeah, that really jumps out. It feels like he's building a closed linguistic system, where only he has the key.
Mm-hmm.
Like constantly redefining words. You mentioned paranoia becoming mind beyond.
Right.
Or the necktie thing turning it into a noose and leash tied to a slave mentality. I mean, it's a powerful image, sure.
It is. Very visceral.
But it instantly traps the listener, doesn't it? Accept the definition or you're already disagreeing on his terms. It's an intellectual barrier from the get-go.
It feels a bit like academic gatekeeping, actually, but applied to, esoterica. He's got his own glossary, Blue Beam, Phanazoid, Ancient Oblivion, Fractal Verse.
Right.
And if you don't use his words, his specific meanings, you literally can't engage with the core argument. So how do you peer review that? You can't. You're immediately told you're using the wrong language. It's impermeable.
And that's the weakness right there. Making his specific language the entry fee creates dependence, not understanding.
Exactly. So for improvement, if the goal is to move from being this isolated decoder to maybe a more robust thought leader, he needs to ground these unique concepts first.
How so?
By showing he understands and can articulate the acknowledged external frameworks, even if he plans to reject them. He needs to demonstrate mastery of the conventional before pivoting to his unique interpretation.
Okay, so show you know the rules before you break them.
Precisely. The audience needs that foundation. They need to see he's not just ignoring established ideas out of ignorance.
But isn't there a danger there? If he references, say, the multiverse theory too much, does that accidentally legitimize the very mainstream science he's trying to move beyond? How does he walk that line?
It's about how he references it. Not just assertion, but rhetorical contrast. So when he brings up the fractal verse, for instance, he should briefly say, okay, mainstream science talks about this with the multiverse theory, which he does mention, or maybe the buoyancy density model for gravity. Acknowledge it.
Okay.
Then pivot. But, he could say, those models fail to account for X, Y, and Z electrical phenomena, which is why the fractal verse model becomes necessary. See the difference?
Yeah, it shifts it from just throwing out a term to actually arguing why the alternative is needed. It builds a bridge, kind of.
Right. It becomes a comparative argument, much stronger.
Okay, give me another concrete example. Maybe with one of those word redefinitions.
Sure. Take weirdo. He links it to fate word breath, to weird.
Right.
Instead of just stating his definition as fact, he should use that contrast. Say something like, look, society might call you a weirdo, meaning strange or outcast. But the true root, the etymology, connects to weird, the power of fate, the divine word. So what they see as strange is actually your link to destiny.
Ah, okay. That frames it as uncovering a deeper truth versus just inventing a meaning. It adds that layer of scholarly rigor, even if the etymology itself might be debatable for linguists.
Exactly. It builds credibility rather than demanding blind faith in his vocabulary. It opens the door instead of locking it.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to the second area. This one feels related, actually. It's about the connections themselves.
Yes, the host seems to have this compulsive rhetorical need to chain every disparate idea together, this aggressive syncretism, finding patterns everywhere. It risks sacrificing real critical depth for just, broad pattern finding, almost pattern finding for its own sake.
You definitely feel that. There's this palpable, maybe anxiety, a need to connect every single dot back to the main thesis, the plasma apocalypse idea.
No loose ends allowed.
Right. So you get these exhaustive links. The Nike swoosh is connected to the Hebrew valve, meaning nail or victory.
Yep.
The Hellfire Club in Stranger Things is tied to a specific comic book, issue 134.
Down to the number.
And Humpty Dumpty falling off the wall becomes the fall of sin, which he says is the moon or an inverted dome. It's relentless.
And that sheer volume, that constant barrage of connections, it starts to induce fatigue in the listener, doesn't it?
It does.
He forces everything to converge. Rich source material, like Stranger Things with all its layers, gets flattened into just proof for his one big idea.
Yeah, it feels less like exploration and more like watching someone relentlessly hammer square pegs into round holes to prove they fit. Confirmation bias on overdrive.
And psychologically, you could argue it's a way to impose order on what feels like chaos. But the side effect is if every detail is equally significant proof,
then nothing really stands out as truly significant. It all becomes noise.
exactly. It paradoxically weakens the core argument.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if the main idea was that strong. Would he need to grasp at straws like, say, the etymology of Nancy's name? It hints at maybe an underlying fragility. Like the core needs constant, frantic reinforcement from every possible angle, however tangential.
Right. So building on that, the suggestion here is about introducing some selective ambiguity, intellectual discernment, basically.
Okay, what does that look like in practice?
Instead of treating every single connection, every word play, every visual echo as absolute, undeniable proof of the impending apocalypse, he should prioritize, do deep dives on the strongest correlations, the ones that really hold up under scrutiny.
And to be fair, the material does have some strong ones.
Absolutely. The links he draws between the fictional elements around 11 and the documented history of the Montauk Project and MK Ultra, that's compelling stuff.
Right, because there's a real-world anchor there.
Exactly. Put those front and center. Make the case there. But then acknowledge that other, maybe weaker connections, like the Cheerios Charios wordplay or the Humpty Dumpty thing.
Yeah?
Frame those differently. Call them compelling thematic parallels or suggestive resonances, maybe even interesting curiosities, but not foundational evidence.
So differentiate between core proof and thematic color.
Precisely. It demonstrates intellectual honesty. It shows he can weigh evidence. It actually allows the core thesis, the strong parts, to breathe and have more impact because they aren't drowned out by the noise of weaker links.
Okay, so concretely, let's take the Dungeons and Dragons connections in Stranger Things.
Yeah?
He should focus the proof part on the deep mythological stuff. Will, the Welrupos Negra, Mount Meru. Those show genuine research, deep cuts.
Right, those have substance.
But then when he gets to something like Nancy's name supposedly deriving from Old High German Nanzik, meaning nature or glyph of God.
Treat that more lightly?
Yeah. Frame it as, and here's an interesting linguistic aside, perhaps a subtle nod, rather than presenting it as another ironclad piece of evidence proving the whole cosmic structure. Modulate the certainty level based on the strength of the connection.
That shift from absolute proof for everything to compelling parallel for some things, it's crucial. It actually signals confidence in the main argument.
How so?
Because when a speaker can say, okay, this connection here is maybe more thematic, less direct, they gain trust. They aren't trying to force every piece to fit perfectly. They seem less driven by a need to control the narrative, absolutely.
I see. It's the difference between being a self-appointed decoder of everything and a rigorous researcher who weighs evidence.
Exactly. That perceived objectivity is far more persuasive in the long run.
Which neatly brings us to the third main point, which is about how he actually manages the audience relationship.
Right. The host uses a pretty rigid in-group, out-group setup. He structurally positions his audience as the remnant, the chosen few.
Which is, a classic rhetorical technique, isn't it? For managing dissent and building loyalty through dependence?
It absolutely is. And this is where you really see the cultivation of that persona we talked about, the essential gatekeeper.
How does that manifest specifically?
Well, he consistently frames disbelief or even just trusting conventional advice, like seeing a therapist or listening to authorities, as stemming from fear or ignorance, or worse, as belonging to the slave class.
Right. You hear that distinction clearly. There are the preppers, the wise ones, with oil in their lamps, ready for what's coming. And then there's everyone else, the lazy masses, who will show up late to the plasma party, unprepared. It creates this real siege mentality.
It does, and it positions the host as the indispensable guide, the only one providing the necessary survival knowledge. the secrets of the one eye, the true meaning of 666 symbolism, whatever the key is this week.
And the audience's sense of identity, their feeling of being special, becomes tied directly to believing him, depending on his interpretations. Their self-worth gets tangled up in being part of this exclusive group that gets it.
But here's a question. Is that polarization strategy, that intense us versus them, actually the most persuasive approach long-term? Or does it risk becoming brittle?
What do you mean?
Well, when you create such a sharp divide, you shut down any room for organic critical thinking within the group. Skepticism isn't seen as healthy inquiry, it's seen as betrayal, as being brainwashed.
Yeah, dissent becomes contamination.
Right. So the suggestion here is, what if the host reframed skepticism? Instead of calling it a sign of being asleep, present it as a logical challenge, one that his evidence is strong enough to overcome. Encourage debate, don't just demand belief.
That's a pretty fundamental shift in approach, though, from demanding followers to cultivating fellow researchers.
Exactly. The goal should shift towards encouraging independent, critical thought, empowering the audience rather than fostering dependence on the host's unique decoding skills. How he handles disagreement is key.
Okay, so how would that look practically?
Well, think about moments in the source material itself where there's internal conflict or skepticism. Like in Leave the World Behind, the son dismisses his mother's theory about the lights as just electricity.
Right. The host tends to frame the son as naive, part of the ignorant masses.
Instead of that immediate dismissal, the host could use that moment to model open inquiry. He could say, okay, that's the conventional explanation. Let's explore why that might seem plausible, but also why it falls short based on this evidence. Actually engage with the skeptical viewpoint, respectfully.
That's a very concrete example. Or he could take his own claims, like the one about 1,000 years being secretly added to the calendar, or the reference to the Doomsday Book.
Yeah?
Instead of just stating them as secret knowledge he's revealing, he could actively encourage the audience to go verify it themselves. Give them pointers on where to look.
Give them homework, basically. Turn them from passive listeners absorbing secrets into active researchers validating the claims.
Because if they find the evidence,
Then the proof feels like their discovery too, not just something handed down by the host. That builds a much deeper, more resilient allegiance to the ideas, not just dependence on the messenger. It elevates the whole enterprise.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it seems the core theme across all these points is a need for the host's approach, his persona, to evolve, moving away from being this solitary decoder holding all the keys, towards becoming a more globally engaged, intellectually rigorous leader. By softening that internal rhetoric, grounding the language, being more selective with connections, and empowering the audience. It's a shift from control to leadership.
I think that sums it up well. If the host wants his analysis to be taken more seriously, to move beyond a niche following, our suggestions focus on 3 key shifts. First, ground the unique vocabulary in established contexts. Build bridges, don't just direct walls.
Right. Increase the intellectual rigor.
Second, prioritize the really strong deep connections over the sheer volume of forced tangential ones. Let the core thesis shine by reducing the noise.
Strengthen the signal.
Exactly. And finally, third, shift the rhetoric. Move away from that polarizing us versus them model towards cultivating a community of independent, self-motivated researchers. Empower them.
Okay. These actions could potentially transform the work from a closed, somewhat brittle system into something more sustainable and genuinely persuasive.
That's the potential, yes. It requires a shift in the host's own rhetorical stance and perhaps psychological approach.
Well, we invite the listener, the original host, to consider these points, perhaps refine their method, and even submit a revised approach down the line for a follow-up critique.